Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, where we can help you learn how to navigate the journey of divorce with less conflict, less debt, and equip you not to just get divorced, but also learn how to be divorced. Your host, certified divorce coach Karen McNenny, shares her wealth of knowledge, gets advice from other relationship experts, and interviews couples who learn how to have a good divorce, so you can too. Now here's your host, Karen.
Hello, listeners. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am Karen McNenny, your Good Divorce Coach, and this is the Good Divorce Show, where we help you find your path to a divorce journey with less debt, less destruction, less despair. And today we are going to talk with Keila Gilbert, Esquire of Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. She splits her time between Montana and Philadelphia. 30 years ago, after her own painful divorce, she created this private interdisciplinary program to help couples and their families save time and money while reducing harmful stress on them as well as their children. Singing right to our hearts here at the Good Divorce Show. Her divorce mediation program, which is led by experts in the legal, psychology, tax, and financial fields, have helped over 7,000 couples through their difficult divorce transition. They are so proud of the positive impact they have on lives of their children, since they are often lifelong victims of the profound harm that can be caused by that toxic climate when parents choose to litigate rather than mediate. Welcome to the show, Keila.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I just mentioned in your introduction your own painful divorce, and I don't want to scratch old wounds, but I think it is so helpful for our listeners to hear a little bit of context of who we're chatting with today. And your journey 30 years ago, how that's changed your perspective and what brought you into creating a mediation service through the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. Where does the story begin, Keila?
It begins at probably the most painful point in my life, being back here in Montana and reacquainting myself with the small town background I have and how I grew up. No one ever got divorced. And my family's religion, of course, was very much against it. It was guilt, shame, fear, anxiety, every difficult emotion you can imagine flowing through me. And at the same time, I knew that I had to move forward. The divorce was my choice, but it doesn't make it any easier. I always tell my clients, it doesn't matter whether you're choosing it or you're having it chosen for you. They're both difficult seats to be sitting in. But yeah, I made all kinds of mistakes. I did some things right. I sought counseling and had to talk to a few people before I got to someone who resonated with me and you know could give me the good guidance. Yeah, I was a hot mess. And
I love that transparency. And I know there are listeners out there nodding their head like hot mess right here.
yeah.
I remember the days.
Yeah.
Were there children in your divorce journey?
Yes, we had one son, and I think that was the most painful aspect of it. My husband remarried very quickly, as you know, people often make that mistake. And his new spouse didn't understand the importance of a healthy co-parenting relationship, and I guess was concerned that I would change my mind and come back. I don't know what it was, but she started alienating my son almost immediately, quite effectively for some period of time. So that I think is, of all of it, I mean, it was the right decision for me personally. It led me to found Alpha Center, where I've been able to help, you know, thousands of other people make better decisions. But yeah, that remains a difficult point for me, is the psychological and relationship damage that, you know, she caused to my son.
Let's just go down that rabbit hole real quick. Parental
Sure.
alienation. That
Mhm.
may be a phrase that listeners haven't heard before, don't know how to watch for it. They may even be someone participating in it and not recognizing it, or they have a new partner in their life who's perpetuating that parent alienation. So give us a little overview of what it is, it's dangerous, and how to avoid it.
Yes, our practice, as you pointed out, is interdisciplinary. So we spend a lot of time with therapists. They handle all the parenting matters in our program. So we learn from them. I'm an attorney, but I learn personally and through our professionals about parental alienation. But there's no substitute like going to a therapist that understands it thoroughly, because it is tragic. It is essentially what it is they alienate the affections of the child against a parent. And understanding the importance of parents' roles in children's lives, you can see how devastating it can be to undermine that important relationship, especially when they're younger. And the end result is that a lot of them end up with relationship difficulties of their own, addictions, depression, a lot of mental health issues, because they've kind of gone through that traumatic experience. And it happens more often than you think, and it takes a lot of professional work to even attempt to undermine or to undo it, I guess, not undermine it. It's very difficult. The therapists that we work with have indicated that many of the people that are perpetrating the parental alienation have profound mental health issues themselves, narcissism, this sort of things that makes it very difficult for them to understand or even care about the long-term impact of what they've done to this child. So yeah, it is, I think 11% was the last figure I read of divorce relationships, not always divorce, but parental relationships that have undergone alienation by one or the other parent. It's much more common than we think.
I just want to say right off the bat how refreshing it is to speak to a legal professional who
Mhm.
has, not only in your own heart, but has created a business with
Mhm.
those wraparound holistic processes. I
Mhm.
am known to say on this very show, lawyers help us get divorced, but we also need to learn how to be divorced.
Mhm.
Two different things. And we've got family and finances, and there's a lot more. What we often hear in our social narrative, which is lawyer up and fight, which is just about stuff. But we have these children. And what really stands out is your comment about the damage that might be done. And we have big T and small t, right? Capital T trauma and small t trauma. And
Mhm.
it is a crisis and a
It
trauma
is.
experience. It's on the ACEs,
Mhm.
adverse childhood experiences. But these little subtle things do create a blueprint in that child's life that then they're
Right.
trying to unravel in their adult life and really impacts the partners they choose, like you said, addictions, their own journey of self-esteem. And
Mhm.
when there's a parent, I always say your mom is your mom is your mom, your dad is your dad is your dad. And regardless of what happened between the parents, or even sometimes not having great parenting skills, it's so important that that child still feels like they're supported and witnessed and known and have an attachment to both
Absolutely.
parents.
Absolutely. And that's one of the beauties of my practice, is that I don't have to just be around lawyers all the time. I have financial counselors, CPAs, but I think I learned the most from the therapists, and I appreciate it so much. They've helped me just refine the program, just so that it's not only about the legal matters or the financial matters, it's about the personal journey and how you land on the other side of it is so important. And yeah, I've learned a lot from them, and I'm very grateful to them.
I have to ask, I'm just
Mhm.
curious, how did your relationship with your son change over time? And how old was he when you divorced?
He was 7, and it was for a while, um, which without going into detail, it he got a little warmer for a while, and then the mental health and other issues continued to plague them, and it just plagued him, and it's very heartbreaking. So it's hard for me to talk about it, but I love him. I love him from a distance, and I always will. And that's what I can do.
I've spoken from a mother's heart. I hear even all these years later, there's a sadness, there's a melancholy of how that happened, and it didn't need to go that way.
No, and I'm all about forgiveness and understanding, even, the people that were instrumental in causing it, if they'd known better, they would have had a healthier perspective. So I'm all about looking for compassion and understanding, because carrying around hatred and anger just weighs too much. So
Yeah.
that's my best takeaway from that situation.
Is at some point you just got to lay it down. I remember one of
Yeah,
my
yeah,
angry, bitter days post-divorce when you're still just so wrapped up in the emotion of it, which
raw.
and I've once heard, anger is what pain looks like when it shows up in public. There's a lot of pain under there. I had a wise friend who turned to me one day in my ranting and said, Karen, you're just taking the poison every day and hoping he'll die. Just
Yeah,
stop.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I think the Dalai Lama or some Buddhist wise person came up with that analogy, and it's very true.
So, as we help our listeners think about how to avoid those pitfalls, right? To learn
Mhm.
from your journey and my journey and other guests that we have on the show, where do clients get it wrong? Where do we need to start thinking about what we're reorganizing? You use that word, like we're reorganizing the family. The family
Yeah,
is not dead, and the marriage is
yeah.
done, the relationship is.
I prefer it. I think in litigation, they take it and they just blow it up, scatter the pieces, and people grab whatever, with the lawyer, of course, coming up with oftentimes with the lion's share of the marital estate and fees. But in my mind, it's so much healthier to do a dismantling and a reorganization. And that's what we do. And heavy emphasis on education, support, guidance, and most of the focus that we can direct is toward the future. We tell them, rip off that rearview mirror. It's not helpful. Look through the windshield, and we'll all plan for the next phase of your life. So you land on solid ground instead of, looking back. You're looking forward.
Oh, but it's so easy to get stuck in the past, right? That rear view mirror, the
Yeah,
wrongs,
yeah,
trail you remember and you didn't and you should have and we could
yeah,
have. It. Like it's gone. We
yeah.
can't change that at this point. All you're in charge of and have any control of is the future.
I'm sure you've heard the statistics. First marriage is 50%, second marriage is 60, third marriage is 70. And I think it's in large part because people are focused on what that other person did or didn't do. And they don't what we call do the U-turn and look at, oh, what in my decision making and my thinking do I need to adjust so that I don't fall into the same trap again, and that I really make the next chapter of my life the best it can be. And yeah, it's that backward focus as opposed to the forward focus. And I think a good therapist is so helpful with that. Because if you just go to family and friends, they're good at giving you love, and they'll kind of mirror whatever you're saying. But you need to go to an expert for real good guidance. And so I'm a big fan of your profession.
Yes, thank you. I'm delighted. People think it's so bizarre that I want to work with divorcing families all the time. And I said it is the most rewarding work that
Thank you.
I've
Yeah.
come to.
Hear that too. How can you do thousands every day? There is sadness and there is difficulty, but there's also inspiration. People in their worst phase of life taking the high road and finding the clarity to carefully plan their future, and to be wise, and to let go of the anger. That's a
Mhm.
biggie.
When you talk about education is a big part of the work that you do. I like this idea of we don't blow it up and leave the pieces. We unravel what we knew and then we reorganize and try to send these co-parents back into the world with new tools that maybe they didn't have at all in their marriage or they didn't know how to use them. Are there any of those specific tools or education pieces that come to mind little nuggets that we could pass on to our listeners today?
Well, with regard to children, there's a lot. In fact, years ago, in the early days, I worked with a very wise PhD psychologist, Dr. Eileen Klitsch, and she developed for us a list of children's needs during divorce. And I'd be happy to share that with you because it is just hits the nail on the head. You know, things that you would assume, you know, not making children choose between parents, and but there are some more subtle and meaningful advice for that. I mean, I kids handle divorce the way their parents do, and it's going to be a speed bump, but it doesn't have to be and it's all about what do you tell them, when do you tell them, how do you communicate with them, in front of them, hopefully not through them. So yeah, I think for me, the kids are always the most important. And so I would put my emphasis there.
That sounds like a wonderful resource, and I would love to include it in the show notes
I will share it with you.
about what kids need. This wonderful soundbite, Keila, that kids will handle divorce the way their parents handle divorce, and they will follow that lead. I remember as a young parent, if my child fell down and scraped their knee up, and my mentors would always say, if you freak out, Karen, they're going to freak out.
Right.
But if you say, let's dust it off and get a Band-Aid and carry on, they're going to follow that lead.
Yeah.
Always go that way, but I think that's a great place to start. And the other phrase that just leapt out is that we try not to communicate through the children. These are really subtle, like, and if we're not tuned in, we just do it. Well, why don't you ask your dad to pay for the other half of soccer? I don't know. Does your dad have his girlfriend over tonight?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ask mom why she won't let you go on vacation with blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
These subtle things that then put the child either in the role of mediator, negotiator, or spy, or reporter, right?
Or even what they call parentification, where they make a parent out of them. And I want to just put a pin in this right now, because when I went through my divorce, I made a lot of mistakes. And so I sound like a wise old lady now, but you know, it is very difficult, first of all, to know the right thing. I learned a lot through it and afterwards, but yeah, I made mistakes, and all parents are going to make mistakes, even if they're not getting divorced. So I think it calls for a little bit of compassion and humility when we're trying to guide others in a more positive direction.
Absolutely, that compassion and humility. What, in your opinion, just as we head into our break, for the families that you've worked with that come out the other side and you think they're whole again, or they have a good divorce, or you can see they're going to have a future. You know, I always say we get divorced to improve the relationship, right? We're all in terrible relationships and we're like, let's get divorced to make it better. But then a lot of times we make it worse. So I think paradigm shift, that what the new repaired good divorce look like? What are the hallmarks of a healthy future relationship? Can you predict?
Well, yeah, I think it's just to bring it down to basic levels. And again, parents that have children, I mean, some people getting divorced don't have children, but it's the ability to go to the graduations, the weddings, the family events, and not be the crazy maker in the room, you know, making your child and other family members anxious and uncomfortable. You know, being the one that's being kind and pleasant in interactions. You don't, you know, if you loved them, you'd still be with them. So you don't have to go that far, but you do have to be decent and, you know, be able to attend those events and keep the joy in it instead of creating anxiety.
Right, that future vision. Can we sit at graduation? Can we sit at the wedding? Can we not make it our children's job to have to negotiate those parents 50 years later? Beautiful vision. Well, we're chatting today with Keila Gilbert of Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, which provides a holistic approach to the divorce process, incorporating legal, financial, therapeutic support so that families can come out the other side more whole often than maybe where they stepped into the divorce process. When we
Mhm.
get back, we're going to continue our conversation with Keila. Please stay tuned. This is the Good Divorce Show.
Are you thinking about getting divorced? Before you call a lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach, Karen McNenny, a certified divorce counselor, co-parenting specialist, and mediator. Karen's signature Good Divorce experience will guide you through your divorce journey, from the day you make that difficult decision to the day the decree is signed, all for a predictable fee. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to get divorced and be divorced with less conflict and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Now, back to the show with Karen.
Welcome back to the Good Divorce Show. I am Karen McNenny, your Good Divorce Coach, chatting today with Keila Gilbert, who is founder, lawyer, wise pioneer, has established the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation 30 years ago and continuing to support families as they move through what Keila and I know to be one of the most challenging times of any family's life in that transformation. Welcome back to the show, Keila. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really enjoying our conversation.
Well, we are two peas in a pod in many
Yes, we are.
ways and have found the journey through divorce does not have to be one that involves the courts. It does not have to involve lots and lots of debt and money going to multiple lawyers and litigation. There is a different path. Would you give us an overview when a client comes to visit Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation? What can they expect?
Well, first and foremost, on a basic level, I insist that those phones are answered by a human being, as opposed to a recording. And on the other end of the phone, they're going to find somebody that's knowledgeable, compassionate, and people's needs enough to guide them in the right direction. Now, some people we do need to refer to other resources, but yeah, they're going to be met with a human being that really cares and knows how to give them guidance, and that's our client cares administrative people. Then next, they move on to a consultation with an attorney mediator. I don't see clients anymore. I haven't for years. I focus on training the others and maintaining the high quality of the program. But in that meeting, they'll get an assessment, a general indication of how the law applies to them, and a recommendation of how to move forward. To our earlier discussion, if we cannot get a meaningful conversation in the first 15 minutes because they're banging heads, generally we will refer them to litigation attorneys if we recognize that they can't work in a simple meeting within our format. Doesn't happen very often. I say our clients are the best of the best, the cream of the crop, because they're self-selecting, they're making a wise choice. Yeah, they are generally very
I just want to clarify in that you work with both parties,
always.
which is my practice as well. And that is unique, I have come to find. As a divorce coach, as a co-parenting specialist, as a mediator, the first thing that happens when people say, well, we've decided to be divorced, we need to lawyer up and go to our corners and then battle. I think best results, the best outcome is when both parties can come to the table together. And it sounds like that's a requirement.
It's a requirement. And all emails everybody is copied on emails. It's a full open disclosure, because anything less than that breeds distrust. And it is so important for them to trust the professionals and to trust the process. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why one of my advisements is that don't stay too long. Like, when you know your truth, that this marriage is complete, and if there's just even a little bit of that love story that you can hold on to, that's the time to find your mediator. That's the time to call Keila, is when you can still sit at the table together.
Can I compliment you on a word you used? When the marriage is complete. And how often do we hear people say it failed? I'm a failure, the marriage failed. And I have so often steered people more toward it ended. If I'm not used the word complete, I might switch over.
I had someone the other day say, "Oh yeah, you work with broken families." I said, "The family is not broken. The family is very much intact. They just now live across two homes. They are
Right.
still family living across two homes." Language in this perspective and paradigm shift is part of our work as pioneers, you and I.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
So highlight for us when, because you don't take every client on through,
Mm-mm.
or people might even head down the road with you. When do you know you need to dismiss a client because it's going to litigate?
Well, it's dishonesty, people who are not forthcoming. And our rule is on discovery that they have to submit everything we want to see, and they have to submit everything that each other wants to see. And if we see holding back and refusal to be open and honest, then we know it's those folks belong in litigation, which is sad. Yeah. And the other thing we can't, we cannot level the playing field when there's
Right.
and usually we're pretty good at picking it up in our meeting, and we make it clear from the very beginning, but the attorney can pick it up. But I've had a case or two where it's gotten past the attorney, and when they sat down with the therapist parenting mediator, they picked it up because their antennas are just more fine-tuned, and they are asked to leave. Those are, yeah, dishonesty and abuse. Those are our two game deal breakers.
Breakers, right? They're not in the right place.
Right.
You also have these other conditions in which you might be done with a couple before they divorce because in the process they actually reconcile. Tell us about where do you find these people and how does it unfold?
Well, remember, it's a self-selecting group, and so I think they're probably wiser, more savvy than the people that just autopilot off to divorce litigators, and maybe more open-minded. And I find over the years, actually, it's easier to work with people that are at their throats than people that are too kind, because when they sit and cry through the whole thing, you're saying, and you can't put your judgment out there, but you're always saying, why are they here? Why are they doing this? But yeah, they just they get to the end of their rope in their relationship, and they don't see another avenue. And then they come in and talk to us, and they see what divorce looks like. They start on that path. They realize that it's worth another go, and we refer them to marriage counselors. We never just toss people out the door. We always make sure we hand them off to somebody reputable that can meet their needs.
I just think that's extraordinary. I've had a few clients who explore. They're like,
Yeah.
well, now that you're teaching us new skills, Karen, and how to even the domestic
Yes.
field and how to communicate to each other and how to de-escalate and manage our emotions. They're like,
Yes.
well, we got more to work with now. I think we'll go back and work. And my friend said, you're a terrible divorce coach if people aren't getting divorced.
You know what? It would be best for the whole world if there were no divorces and everybody was happily ever after. We'd find other ways to make a living, wouldn't we?
I would be delighted to be put out of business. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
As long as we know there are families, that the alchemy changes inside that relationship, we come to that recognition of completeness, then let us find a dignified way to structure the family. No need to blow it up. But even with
Right.
our clients, there are surprises. I mean, you recalled a story where you learned something about the husband that totally changed how you were going to work with that couple. And we recognize that we have to be client-centered as practitioners because we don't know what's going to walk in the door.
Oh,
Recount
that was
story.
a couple of books about his experience, but I'm still not comfortable putting his name out there. But essentially, he had a brain tumor that had to be operated on. And he was a successful professional prior to that. And it just slowed everything down and everything more difficult for him and for his children and his wife. And so I've never met anyone that struggled with that. So when I was in the room with them, I was just on high alert for, was he understanding what I was saying? How was he processing the emotions? I just had to have a heightened sense of what was going on with him. And generally being totally neutral, you have to look at both parties, but his was the more unusual need at that point. And during one meeting, it was frightening because he just totally shut down. He went into, I guess, catatonic state for what seemed like forever. And I'm sure it was, only a minute or so, but we all sat quietly and I looked at her and she, been through this and she just said, stand the course. And then he came out of it and we went on with our business. But every client, I say they're all the same and they're all unique. And he was more unique than, than most. I really, I admire them both for how they conducted themselves while they were in our program.
Now, you are one of these early pioneers, Keila, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
opening up the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. And again, reminding listeners, you're bringing in a team that has legal expertise and mental health and family parenting support, tax, finance. Like, it just sounds dreamy because honestly, we need all of those things as we go through the divorce process.
Because oftentimes those things get, they don't do a thorough tax examination and so that's going to crop up down the road if they don't have a solid parenting agreement that talks about the rules of dating and other, that's going to crop up. And there's so many of these things. My goal is when they come in the front door, we're looking at the back door. We want to resolve and settle everything that we can so that the next chapter of their lives is as smooth as life allows.
Yes, as life allows. As a longtime industry professional who really started in this not only cooperative, but what I call wraparound services, like a holistic approach. How has the industry changed? I've heard you say, like, when I started, my colleagues thought I had three heads and this was impossible.
Yeah.
But
well,
here
you are back east, and I can only speak to that because that's where I practiced. Is over the course of the last, I'm going to say 5, maybe 10 years, there are imitators springing up. But what they're doing is they're shaving off the important services to maximize profit. So they won't bring in a parenting expert, they'll do it themselves. So you have a jack of all trade thing going on. The other thing that's, and you know what, anybody that goes to mediation is better off than litigation. Not anybody, maybe that was too broad, but most people.
And can we just clarify, don't forget to stop, but I want to clarify why we're both nodding our heads around that. That mediation gives you who are listening right now, who are thinking about your process, you are going to have more power, more influence and control about your future. As soon as you hand it over to a judge, there is no guarantee what's going to come, and your voice gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and the lawyer's voice gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And lawyers are trained to do one thing, and they do it really well, which is to fight for you. And they may start a battle that didn't even exist between you and your former spouse.
Oftentimes do.
So I just want to be really clear why we believe the mediation path to allow your voice to design your own divorce as a platform of foundation of designing your future life together.
The other benefit is there's more buy-in because you had a proactive part in crafting it. So there's going to be more compliance. Yeah.
I am speaking today with Keila Gilbert, a lawyer and wise woman, can I add?
Thank you.
founder 30 years ago, Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, offering a holistic approach in the Philadelphia area. I want to, let people know that that's where you're at. Where can people find you and additional resources, Keila, in the practice that you offer there in Pennsylvania?
There is our website. We're redesigning it, and we've got over 600 pages of content gathered on our website, and they're telling us we have to trim it down. But it is a real fountain of information, videos, articles from all of our professionals and others over the years. And that's alpha-divorce.com. So you want to get on it before they take down all that content. Pardon?
No, I was just encouraging our listeners, and we'll put all that information in the show notes.
Yeah, okay.
Go and capture some of those resources in case they disappear in the revamp. We're chatting in the summer of 2024. Fortunately, this is evergreen material. People are going to get to hear your stories and insights for years to come. Is there some particular wisdom that you would like to pass on to our listeners today as they consider their own divorce journey?
On a basic human level, know your own goodness at times when you're being pummeled with everything that's wrong with you, Yeah, the anxiety, the fear, the shame, the blame, those are all a natural part, but seek good counseling, work with a coach like you so that you can get out of those destructive mindsets. But the one point I was going to touch on earlier, we're talking about mediators, and even the litigators have caught on that people like that word mediation. And so we're seeing back there, I don't know if it's happening here, but they're putting on their website, they're holding themselves out as mediators. And then when the client calls the practice, they'll say, well, your case isn't right for mediation. You need you need me to fight for you, essentially. So it is very dangerous just to pick up the phone and call somebody that holds himself as a mediator. You want to do background checks. You want to talk to people. Anybody that's been litigating a long time, not likely to be a good mediator, and perhaps doing that bait and switch that so many back there are doing. And we get a lot of feeds from the internet. And if you put divorce mediation on your site and you pay Google My Business a whole lot of money, you'll pop up, and people get pulled into litigation that didn't need that time, that expense, that pain. It's heartbreaking, but there are many self-serving professionals. Fortunately, you and I aren't among them.
Are not. We are for the divorced families to find their new renovated version of themselves without going through so much despair and damage and debt. There really is another path. And folks like you, Keila, are leading the way on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. So grateful for joining us today here on the Good Divorce Show. We will have a bunch of resources in our show notes as we close our conversation today with Keila Gilbert of Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. Thanks so much, Keila.
Thank you, Karen. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
And to you, my listeners, and everyone out there trying to find their way, I remind you, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Thanks for listening. Do you have questions or thoughts about this week's episode? Let us know by following the Good Divorce Coach on Facebook and Instagram at Good Divorce Coach, and leave a comment. And be sure to tune in every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific, or listen anytime wherever you get your podcasts.